I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns versus the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are laying 3 points at home. Well, here's two teams that are really pretty much kind of in the same situation. Both teams are third in their division, right? They have almost the same records. Cleveland's 5-7-1 and Denver's 6-7. Both of them aren't completely out of the playoffs, but they're most likely out. But Cleveland's been on the up since they fired that Hugh Jackson, man. Terrible coach. And we
no action Jackson.
No winning Jackson. And you and I covered that to death, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And decided to go with Freddie Kitchens, right? Denver, on the other hand, still has some coaching controversy over Vance Joseph there. And, when looking at the team stats, you have to give it to Denver slightly on defense, averaging about 25 less yards per game than Cleveland giving up. And you got to give Cleveland slightly on offense, averaging about 4 yards per game more. The handicap I love here is the situation, though. Cleveland is still very motivated, trying to prove that they are finally not just going to be relevant now, but maybe a playoff team next year. They're getting their fans excited. They love Baker Mayfield. They're just, everyone's hyped up. It's a new team here, new coach. Remember what happened to the Bears when they got a new coach? And while Denver pretty much had their playoff hopes crushed last week when they went to San Francisco, right? What's even now worse for Denver, they got hit hard with the injury bug. Over the last few weeks, they lost Emmanuel Sanders, and that's, and they've traded away Demaryius Thomas, we all know. They lost their tight end, Jeff Heuerman. They lost their best cornerback, Chris Harris. And then now if you look at the injury report, there's a ton of people banged up on there, right? A ton of people. They're all questionable. Because of this and their season-crushing situation last week, I see Cleveland not only covering the spread, but I also see them winning this game outright. I think Cleveland is the up-and-coming team. They're still motivated. I'm taking Cleveland +3 and sprinkle that money line.
I like it. I'm still shell-shocked with Cleveland for all these years of being so bad. And you want to know what? They really looked good this year. I thought they were going to have a terrible year, and they were until they fired the coach, right? But ultimately, I like the play from your angle there. Absolutely love it. Denver, a little bit of an older team now. Mm-hmm. And, I ultimately think that they may be cashing it in now, right? And I'm loving it.
Well, and it's not just that. I wish when you did season win totals and bet the under on Cleveland, right? And I know you did that. I didn't, but I've been bust on this in certain situations. They fire the coach and end up doing better. It's like I wish I had a caveat there that said, if you fire your coach, this bet doesn't longer count.
You get an extra win up on your total there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why it's very difficult to do that over under for the year. But yeah, you're 100% right.
Yeah, I guess in your situation, your hedge right now would be betting Denver, betting Cleveland +3, and so if Cleveland only loses by 2 or 1, you're still good on both sides of the bet right there. So
and listen, Cleveland Browns, they're 8-5 against the spread this year.
Yeah,
that's pretty good, right? And they've only won a few games, so that's pretty good. You got to be excited with that. And one team's trending up, the other team's trending down, and we're 14 weeks into the season. We kind of know where these guys are sitting at. We can go through all the stats, all these guys, everything we want to do, but ultimately, you're looking at these teams, where they're at, where they're trending, where teams are going down. And listen, one's going up, one's going down, and one's got mojo and the other one's got, a coach that they're going to fire as well. But a little too late.
Absolutely, my man. What will you have next?
All right, cool. So Seattle Seahawks are going into the 49ers this week, okay? Look, the 49ers are bad. Not only with their record, but against the spread, they're only 4-9. Remember 2 years ago when everybody laughed at Ryan Pace like you did, everybody else, and saying how Lynch fleeced Ryan Pace for that draft? That draft produced nothing. All those picks, Solomon Thomas at third can be considered a bust at this point. He's done nothing. Another first-round pick, Reuben Foster, couldn't stop beating his girlfriend. He's gone. They picked up a tight end, George Kittles, in the 5th round, who had a career day last week, have a very nice year this year. But last week he picked up 200 yards receiving, which is really nice.
Hey, Danny, just because they pick like crap doesn't mean they didn't fleece Pace. They could have picked some better players, my man.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you something. Let me continue here because they passed up on guys in the draft. You tell me if you know these guys' names, if this sounds familiar to you. Eddie Jackson? Tariq Cohen?
Of course, come on.
Eddie Jackson should be in the Pro Bowl this year, which they passed up on. Tariq Cohen is part of their offense, which has been doing fantastic this year. So that's the 49ers, right? The 49ers were the sweetheart pick of every expert this year. They were predicting 10, 11. I've seen 12 wins by experts, by professionals, but guys that know what they're doing. And I'm throwing my hands up in air quotes, which nobody could see. I get it. They lost their starting quarterback, right? But Lynch drafted C.J. Beathard, right? And he should have been able to step in and at least get one win against the Cardinals. And he had 2 chances. And you know what he went? 0-2. Now they're down to their undrafted quarterback in Nick Mullins. This team, Kiev, this team stinks. If they had all this draft capital that they could have been building these guys and building this draft, they would have had players in there to do well. Now, on the other hand, Seattle started the year off with 2 straight losses. They didn't look good, all right? I was looking at this team and saying, man, there's no way this team's going to win 4 or 5 games this year. Okay, but they turned their season around, and they're sitting right in the 5th seed right now for the NFC. They could certainly run the table and end the season with 10 wins. Okay, so the defense is playing absolutely unreal. We watched it last week with the Vikings. They absolutely shut them down, basically destroyed them last week. It could have been a shutout if it wasn't for the last-second touchdown. It was so bad that the Vikings fired their offensive coordinator. Right, this year they're 3rd best in the league against the spread at 8-3-2. That's how much Vegas thought about. That's how much the boys in Vegas thought about these guys, right? And they gave them no respect. 8-3-2. If you took 8-3-2 as a record for betting every single week, you would be a quadrillionaire because that is very good, right? They don't have any signature wins at all, right? Their losses. This is the kind of their negative. They lost week 1 against Denver. They lost week 2 against the Bears. They lost against the Rams twice. And the Chargers, all but the Broncos of these teams are all playoff. They're all top of their conference, and they're all the best teams in the league. So they don't have any signature wins, right? Mm-hmm. Now, let's end, right? It's coming to the end. These Seahawks still have something to play for. They can't get the division, but they're still fighting for that playoff. With the wild card, they want to get that 5th seed, right? They don't want to go into Chicago. They'd probably rather play in Dallas, right? So, considering that, and just 2 weeks ago, Kiev, they kicked the crap out of the 49ers, 43-6. This shouldn't be any different. The 49ers have nothing to play for. There's nothing there. These players don't want to play anymore. They're done. They've got a bunch of old players. They've got a bunch of young kids. They're just not any good to make any difference. The Seahawks are playing on a high. I think their defense wants to come out and prove to everybody in the league that they are elite and scare other teams going to the playoffs. Right now, the Seahawks are laying -5. If it wasn't for the 49er game last week, this game should have been at -9. Okay, I'm taking the Seahawks here, giving up 5, and they're going to win at least by 7 points. At least, right? At a minimum, by an accident, 7 points this weekend with probably double digits. I'm taking the Seahawks this weekend.
So there's a couple weird things about the 49ers. They lost a ton of games this year, right? But the strange thing about them is they've outgained their opponents every time. And the reason they freaking lost is because they turn the ball over. They're like worst in the NFL in turnover margin. I didn't check since last week, but I believe they are still worst, and that's the weird thing about it. How do you handicap these turnovers? And trust me, I look at the Niners every single week and wonder that myself. The Bears are number 1 in turnover margin at +1 per game. The Niners are worse at -1.6. I personally believe you should factor that in a little bit, but their win-loss record sure shows it by that. Now, the way I ran the numbers is if the Niners don't turn the ball over at all, then they might cover the spread. And if they do turn the ball over even just once more than the Seattle, then they don't. And you almost got to expect it with Mullins. So trust me, I am definitely not going to be on the Niners this week. Now, I think that game that they had against Seattle, they actually did outgain Seattle in the yards, but their turnovers absolutely killed them. But at the same time, it's hard to say that because when Seattle's playing with the lead, they're just running the ball, not getting yards, and running the clock. So if Seattle had to turn on the guns, they would have, right? But they didn't. So
if it was 17-16, I'd say Kiev, you got a point.
It was I agree because Seattle played prevent defense and just let them kind of bend, don't break. And so that's why that stupid stat of, San Fran outgained them in yards. That's why I don't believe that much, That's why I don't want to go against Seattle. If you look at the sharp money, it's been on San Francisco. It went from +7 all the way down to +4.5. I think it's bad. There's some buyback, and I think it's at +5 now. So I don't disagree with you there. It's just that what the hell's going to happen with the turnovers is kind of what I'm
listen. I don't blame you at all. I could just tell you it was 20-0 going into at the end of the first first half, and see how 49ers kick a field goal to make it 20-3. And the game was basically over, right? And they poured in a bunch of points, right? So. Listen, the 49ers, look, I don't even believe in their coach, right? They do a nice job with their running game, right? Whoever they put in there, Shanahan does a good job making sure the guy does a good job running. But ultimately, there's no quarterback. Their defense is poor at best. Seattle's run 4 in a row, right? Are there any signature wins? No.
Is it the coach, or is it all those terrible draft picks you just discussed?
No.
The front office. What's funny? I did hear something about the coach. Somebody said that maybe he's a better offensive coordinator than a head coach, and I think it's a little too early to question that. But I'm definitely not going to give him Coach of the Year, yet or anything like that.
No.
And some of those guys really didn't turn off. And I'll tell you that Foster, you're right. That was a terrible pick. They had to end up cutting the guy. And you could see why. He just can't stop with the domestic. So definitely there. Let's move on. Let's get off that game. Let's go. Let's get into a game that I handicapped. And some things have changed since I've written this down. Philadelphia versus the LA Rams. The Rams were laying 9 points. If you saw the Eagles' season win total around 9 or 9.5, it is because of the brutal schedule that Super Bowl teams get. Because everyone, last year thinking, the Eagles will come back and win 12, 13 games. Well, it just proves you that the NFL is a great equalizer in that aspect anyway, right? They give you the hardest schedule in the world. You win the Super Bowl, get in the playoffs, win your division, blah, blah, blah. Now, the Eagles might this year be the first Super Bowl team to not be over 500 since 2003. I mean, that's 15 years. So that's how bad the Eagles season have been. They've only really beat up on the bad teams last couple of weeks. They beat the Giants before they were starting to figure it out. And the Giants gave them a run for their money. And then they beat a completely decimated Redskins team who have been bringing people off the streets to play offensive line the last 2 weeks. Okay. So
brutal.
They've been brutal. Last week, Amari Cooper exposed what their injured secondary is. He went over 200 yards with a very average Dak Prescott quarterback throwing them the ball, right? Now, the Eagles have to travel to L.A. after that, where they play one of the 4 best teams in the league, right? 11-2, who was embarrassed last week by our Chicago Bears, were they not?
Oh.
Jared Goff's worst performance in his NFL career.
Oh,